That's okay. That's right. It's a little different.
The Army Air Force and Exchange Service, which is an $8 billion company that probably the majority here hasn't ever heard of. That's because we're only allowed to sell to military members. And what we do is we do retail stores around the world, including combat zones, to give your sons, daughters, husbands, wives, spouses, etc., who are working out there, the ability to buy American goods and services at a fair price. And then the profits we make out of that go back into our capital investments and also back as a dividend back to the services to improve their quality of life. So if you've got a member somewhere in Afghanistan, Kuwait, somewhere in Africa, you can actually send them a Christmas present, a Christmas present, and get it just like they're at home. They're in a horrible place, in a tough situation, but at least they can feel at home. And that's where I work. I enjoy it. It's different. We still make money, but we give it back. Just a little different motivation and a little different mission for getting up every day. I do want to point out, before I get too far into this, I am a member of I am a DoD civilian. So the things I'm saying today do not represent the Department of Defense or its opponents' opinion. They are mine and mine alone. A little more background for me, aside from working in the company, I run the governance office, about a $500 million portfolio with about 90 projects in it. Washington assistant process, you guys know we do as PMs. We're keeping everybody happy and not letting anybody shut down projects they shouldn't, and not letting anybody forward projects they shouldn't. Secondly, the things we're going to talk about today are based on a couple of different backgrounds. One, I'm going to take you all the way back to college, which some of you might be longer than I am, some of you less than I, but I'm going to give you three things out of here today. One, a simple but accurate communication model. Number two, and this is kind of a B or an A, not a main point, but if you ever been in a room or a presentation or heard somebody say or say it yourself, I've got the thought, I just can't get it into words. And explain why that is based on that model. Then number three, we're going to go into Ron Hoff's book called Say It in 6. He leaves off the minutes, but says you can give any presentation in 6 minutes. Spoiler alert, we're going over 6 minutes today. And I'll give you 5 steps that he recommends. I'm going to have you practice that at the end. So we'll go ahead and go do that as well. So those are the 3 things. This is all based on college work, as well as I served in the Air Force for 30 years. 20 years of that was in reserves. I ended up at the Pentagon in the CIO's office and also in the comptroller's office, managing $6 billion budget, $7 billion budgets, all the programs, the non-lethal IT. You don't want to know how much of our tax dollars goes for those systems. But managing that and figuring out how to govern them and communicate, reading congressional testimony, preparing our boss to go hear congressional testimony. This is all based on that experience. So with that, let's dig into a little more of the details. I'm going to start out, we'll have just a little discussion on the next slide about what's the hardest thing to communicate. Next thing, I'll get into that communication model, point number 1. At the same time, we'll hit point number 2. Why can't we articulate our thoughts sometimes? Third, successful communication. Now, when I get into this middle range in here, these 2, successful communication and preparing to communicate, everyone has his or her own approach. They're fine. All I'm offering is a way to hone them a little bit. You're seeing them demonstrated today. This is the same thing I did to get ready for today's presentation. We'll go through that, then we'll hit the Ron Hoff communication steps. I'm going to let us dry run it for 5 minutes. Anybody wants to volunteer to give a 2-minute presentation on what they just framed up, we'll have you do that, and then we'll summarize. So let's begin. Call them out, what are the 3 hardest things to communicate? Failures, okay? How about another one? Change, okay? How about other things?
Negative feedback.
Feedback, got it. Strategies, okay. Emotions. A concept, it's abstract, yes. Directions or corrections? Directions. That's when we have the ways. Yes. Passion, all right.
Truth.
Is that what I heard? Truth? All right. Sometimes outcomes, even when you've succeeded, you have to frame it correctly. So what we're going on, and when I've done this presentation before, it's basically dealing with passion or emotional events. Whether it's feedback, trying to get to convince somebody, selling them some idea. You know, if you're going on your first date, it's a little hard to communicate first because you're very interested in each other, or am I interested in this person, right? You're trying to sense that out. And when you're giving feedback to a staff member, or you're getting feedback to yourself, that's hard to receive, it's hard to communicate. And you don't want to come across as defensive. So those are harder things to do. And what I want you to do is just lock one of those in your mind. And when we do the drill at the end, think of one of those. Keep it sanitized, because be sure, I don't want you saying somebody's name or company secrets, but I'll have you practice that at the end. Now, here is this college model I remember from way back when of how we communicate. First of all, in my mind, I think I have a great idea. I think it in English because I speak English, right? I don't know what happened there, but here we go. The next thing I do is I share the idea, and then my goal is the other person says, I get your great idea, but you've been around long enough. This is not how communication really works. I see the looks going, I don't know if I'm going to stay. So here's what really happens. I have a great idea in my mind. I put that into my brain. I look around and I go, it's a PMP conference, kind of know the audience, probably speaking English. So I encode it in a common language, English. So this is what happens. I encode it in common language. I then share that idea. I happen to be doing it verbally. I'm doing some nonverbal gestures and things. And then the reverse has to happen on the recipient side. I decode the idea from the common language, and when I speak German, I speak in German. I used to be able to translate. I'm not good enough at it anymore. But I got to a point where I could just get it in German, get it into my mind in German, and answer in German. Can't do that anymore. Now I have to get it in German, think through, translate it to English, think it back in English, get it encoded in that, and then translate it back into German before I speak. But if you're bilingual or trilingual, you just do that. But when you remember, one of the reasons we make our school students and us take a foreign language is so that you wrestle with that. It's not just to get you exposed to another culture, it's actually to get you to think how we think and communicate. They didn't tell you that though, did they? They never told me that. But when I got in college and I saw this model, I thought, oh, no wonder, especially learning German for 7 years. So eventually the goal is, I get your great idea, which is a communication. Now, let's dip. I want to point out that communication is a process. Most things are. I'm a Lean Six Sigma guy. I can process anything, almost anything, except emotions. And we heard passion is a hard thing to communicate. You can tell I'm a little bit passionate about communication. But no matter what, as we strive for our goals, we succumb to our processes. If I don't know how the communication model works, I can't communicate as well. I just can't, neither can you. So we can succumb to those processes. Now, there's some basic things, I'm sure everybody's familiar with these, but on the far left, you see somebody verbally communicate. In the middle, you got a nonverbal communication. You don't have to ask me what he's saying. He's saying stop what you're saying, stop right there. And then on the far left, or on the far right, is going to be some written communication. Well, then there's layers of this, informal and formal. If I'm sitting with him and he's my best buddy and we're out throwing a frisbee around having dinner, we're using a completely different language style. We've got some inside jokes we share. We don't share them with other people around. We don't want to be rude to them, but you get the drift. There's different things. How can a nonverbal be formal? Put this same man in a blue uniform in an intersection. He puts his hand up to you, you're gonna stop your vehicle. So it can be a formal communication, even though it's nonverbal. Last night I was at a wedding, they signed a marriage certificate. That's a formal communication. How about a text? Non-formal? Which one do you get more in trouble with? Texts, right? Because you think, oh, I can just be light and funny, and all of a sudden you hit caps or misspell the word and you have a problem with somebody if you don't know that person very, very well. You've heard this in a couple of the presentations already, but kindness counts in communication. We just had a meeting with our HR this past week, and they brought management and laboring together, and they started with the labor group first. They said, well, what do you expect of management? And one of the things that piped up or came out was, it's not so much the message, it's more how you deliver it. You can tell me, hey, I've got some problems going on here, but if you go, hey, you're an idiot, and you aren't following the EOP, and this, and this, I'm getting, we put them in a very defensive position. But we all know that if you're a manager and a good, I would say furthermore, a good leader, as far as you can, keep it calm. To illustrate this, I want to give you a little poem. This is just out of a bard. You see a horse bearing the weight of its rider, and for some reason there's a fox, but it's a poem. You have to interpret, so it makes sense. But the horse just says this: no talent or wit can ever beat kindness, said the horse. It sits quietly beyond all things. Now, we all know a horse can't think. He can't think of the abstract, but he is hitting it right. Kindness is an abstract thing. I can give you my voice tone and all that can do it, but you have to feel it. I can't describe it to you. I can't also say, well, I'm being kind, so you must feel that I'm being kind. See, no, that's in the eye of the beholder. So just keep that in mind as much as you can. Be kind. Now, there are times we have to be very direct. I'm in the military, and I'm retired now, but there are times I had to give command, and I was not kind. That was not the point to be kind. It was to get the job done because we were going to lose the mission otherwise. So pick your environments. We have a brain to do that. Pick it, use it, pick it. Now, for successful communication, there's going to be 4 components. We've got to be competent, clear, nuanced, and lastly, reciprocal. All right, now here's your chance to be kind. What was your reaction to my last slide? What do you think? Oops, he made a typo. He just told us how particular he was about his slides. Look what he did. Or did you think we're going off the kindness scale a little bit? Ooh, he's about to talk to me about competent communication. The guy can't even spell competent. Come on, some of you thought that. And lastly, what's he saying now? Is it even thought through? So you had some range of that as it went through. My whole point is, if you're gonna be competent, make everything competent. Don't let your media discredit your message, including your word choice. Words have connotations, okay? Your dress, how you present yourself, all of those things make a difference in being believable. And you have to be well researched to do it to begin with. You can't have the confidence to do it. We all know that. This is things we've all been trained in. But as PMPs and as professionals, we don't talk about communication enough. But we can't communicate. We're disappointed that somebody isn't believing my idea. Now, if you're presenting false facts, if you haven't surveyed people to get their input and include them, I'm going to debate you. But if you have, I'll have a good conversation with you. We'll come up with a better idea. Let's move to clarity now. So clarity, this is from a book of Habits of Grace. We're going to go over two quotes from David Mathis on this. And it comes by writing things down. He says, this first simple thing he says is, the discipline of writing. I'm talking about either typing, road mapping something, or physically writing something. But this discipline of writing facilitates careful thinking, engaging the brain and mind, catalyzes deep feeling, okay, we're gonna bring those emotions out, and inspires intentional action. So these are 3 things that he says, and here's his second quote in the same book. This is a little more detailed. When we write, we not only disentangle our thoughts, draw out our emotions, and dream about fresh initiatives, but also develop them. So let's look at these 2 together. Look at what I've got underlined here. There's something in here, emotions. We are emotional. We are made to be emotional. It's fun to be emotional. It's part of being a human being. It's great. It's a good aspect that we're created to have. But this act and this skill of writing helps not only with other things, but drawing out the emotion. And in doing so, as I prepared for this, I went through some emotions. Now, if I were up here, some of these make me very sad, some of them are very passionate, but if I were up here hectoring you and being really loud and doing too much fluctuation in my voice, you might think I was defensive about it, and that would discredit me. So having written it down ahead of time, not word for word, but most of my ideas,
that help me catalyze my feelings and draw them out, so I'm more credible when I speak. Now, if I'm sitting down with my wife for dinner, I don't pre-plan, think everything out, I'm sure things I want to chat about, but I've known her for 31 years, so we get to that level a lot quicker, and I'm also not as shielded with her about my emotions. She's my wife, and vice versa. So, again, it facilitates careful thinking, helps you dream about new initiatives, and helps you deal with your emotions so you're better when you're on mark in the road. If you were ever to work in my office or my department, you would hear this from me till you were sick of it. Nothing is so unclear until it's written down. What, this doesn't make sense? How could it be unclear when it's written down? Well, let me illustrate this for you. We have a meeting. We're all gelling. We all got the same idea. We're finishing each other's sentences. I'm encoding perfectly, you're decoding perfectly. We're gonna see the sunset. We're gonna make millions of dollars for the company. We're gonna pay dividends, whatever you want. This is, I found the love of my life on my first date. You get the drift, right? But let's go back to the business setting. We all have this same idea because we've all encoded and decoded properly. Saying, when you get done, well, you don't wanna lose this thought, so we're gonna ask somebody to write it down. So he or she goes off on his or her own and starts writing it down. I'm gonna use a process flow, Lean Six Sigma. And the person thinks, well, I saw 4 basic process steps in here, okay? And I remember these relationships, okay, I got it. Now I'm gonna check some of my notes because I don't remember the rest. And I saw that went there, this went here, and that, well. Has this happened to anybody? When you leave a meeting, you thought everybody was on the same page? Well, what did we mean? And it wasn't because we weren't actually in the moment and engaged, we were just encoding and decoding differently. And part of writing it down, I was talking about articulating why you can't get it from your mind to your brain to encoding it. When you start writing it down, you'll wrestle, do I have this mess on the right? Or if I have this mess on the right, what do I have to do? Remember he said disentangle your thoughts and dream bigger? That's what he's talking about. And you may find out your idea is bad. But I'd rather find that out privately than in front of the boardroom or even in peer review. Peer review is okay, but I'd still rather find it out. I don't want to waste my peers' time. All right, so nothing is so unclear until it's written down. I'm going to skip the Oxford comma for lack of time, for time. So here's another phrase I use with folks is that poetry is nuanced where prose is text-based or direct. So poetry, remember the horse with the light rider? It's beyond kindness, is beyond what I can, it's better than wit, I can't grasp it. Well, prose is direct, that's like I'm doing right now if I wrote a paper and did it that way. Now I want to ask you, what gives you a better understanding of why? I'm going to give you some images. I'm not going to sing the national anthem. The national anthem, which the lesson here is poetry or song. It was a poem first, and he said it's a song. Scott Key did. And then for the U.S. Constitution, which is all written down, and I'll give you a little history of that in a minute. So here comes the national anthem. When I think of it, this is what I envision, a U.S. Olympian who's honored herself and the United States. Or one of our monuments of some great heroic act, or one of our current servicemen or women whom we're trying to honor, and I'm trying to work to pay a dividend to and improve his or her life. Now, if I show you the Constitution, I'm going to give you a little of your old civics class. So, Constitution, the first article was establishing the legislative branch. The second was establishing the executive branch. The third was establishing the judicial branch. I'm going to skip to the 7th, which was how we ratified it across the 13 colonies. Then we've got, everybody knows, we've got 27 amendments to it, the first 10 of which are the Bill of Rights. Now, both of these were pertinent to us founding our nation and continuing it. They both convey the idea of our country. Which one do you feel stronger about? It's not the Constitution, sorry. It's the national anthem because it just brings something up in you. And I would pose this to you as well. I have songs that will still come back from the 80s or 90s when I was dating. and I go, oh, that's when I was dating so-and-so, and I'll try to block the name out and stuff, but I imagine there was some events in your life where you go, oh, that was my song with so-and-so, or that's what I was singing when I got this job offer, or whatever. But that draws it back into you a lot more than you can't remember the Constitution. You just can't. It doesn't invoke a feeling like song and poetry do. So on this, poetry is to prose what songs are to lyrics, and that even is a little poetry to itself. Another point that we want to have is to have reciprocity, or just be reciprocal in our communication. And you may have heard, or you've told your team members, or your parents told you this when you were little, like they did me. Hey son, you got 2 ears, 1 mouth, listen as twice as much as you speak. When I got to 8th grade algebra, and you do the math, this is physically impossible. Because there's not enough communication. I pointed out to my parents, I got grounded. Right? It's part of the delivery, I was smarting off. Or is it possible? Let's frame it a little differently. If you include listening as reading or thinking about your subject to prepare to talk about it better, or to have a one-on-one meeting, look what you can get into. You can get into your topic. I know about communication based on my past skills and some of my training. I know my audience. I gave you a preview of who I expect in here, what language to speak, a little bit of philosophy. We got into some poetry, US stuff. Talked about the language already. Now, getting through all of that, which takes a great deal of time, now I'm better prepared to communicate. And in some of the other groups you've already been in today, we talked about empathy. I can empathize a lot better if I prepared over here. So when I get something into my office, it gets tasked out to other team members and such, and I do some of it. But we don't just look at the issue that they're doing, we go to the second, third, fourth effects. And so when I get together with whomever I'm gonna get together or in a meeting to discuss it, I can talk about this range and how it affects the company, certain parts of the company, the division, my specific office, etc., and handle all that. And if they start bringing things up in those areas, I can still address them. But that's all being ready, so doing all this preparation, so I can reciprocate with the person or with the team that I'm going to discuss this with. So you can actually call your parents tonight and say, I finally figured out how to listen twice as much as I speak, like you told me. You want to hear it? And mind your tone when you say it. They're your parents. Preparing to communicate. We're going to get into 4 major areas. Context counts. And in this, I hit a bit on this a little bit, but audience and biography. So if I'm one-on-one, I'm going to find the person's biography. If I can't find a biography, I'll find somebody who knows it through my network group and get some ins and some nos, so I get some personal connection. If the person likes sailing, person likes whatever our common interest is, just so there's something more than, hi, we're here to discuss this item, especially if it's a hot topic. All right, so common interests, these hot contentious points, this presentation is just information for everybody in here, but let's say we're talking about smooth communication so we don't end up in fist fights and worse in our country. And there could be certain examples I would use. There are certain examples I wouldn't use because they are hot and contentious topics. So if your goal is, or if you're assigned anybody to talk about the hot and contentious, remember we talked about writing it down and framing your ideas and working out the emotion. Better get that centered in yourself before you start talking about it. Because you don't want to get in a big argument with somebody if it's a hot contentious point. If you can avoid it, you're going to just avoid it and have some phrases ready. Yeah, it's a very good point you're making. I'd like to put that on the parking lot because I need to stay to the constant, or the agenda at hand. Culture. So we need to know what culture we're talking. Of course, we're in the US, pretty much everybody's going to be speaking English here. But if you went to Albania, or we're talking to an Albanian, that person is of one of 2 nations in the world that do this for no and this for yes. So if I were talking to an Albanian, and I'm a US guy, And even if we're walking through a translator and I'm just following along with her, I'm doing this, just, you know, I would do this with you if I were talking, letting you know I'm following along, and she's hearing, no, 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 no. And if you do this long enough, it's hard to do to yes, yes, yes. So you can try it sometime, but you need to be aware of the culture, because you can miscommunicate something. Again, one of those kinds of communication that we talked about. You need to be aware of that. And if you build a relationship, you know, I've built relationships over time with people. They'll come up and say, hey, when you said this, I'm from this background that means this. Oh my goodness, I didn't even realize that. Thank you for helping me out in that, so I don't make that faux pas again. Next one, the topic. I've used the word frame through here a couple of times. When you are putting an idea together, especially a contentious one, you need to frame it accurately and honestly. You owe it to yourself, you owe it to your company, you owe it to your clients. And when I'm saying partially, what I'm really getting to is, not only do you not set it up so that my answer wins, you include the voice of the opposition. Now, number one, that's professional. Number two is for your own integrity. Number three is for your company, so it makes the best decision because it has the most information available to it as it makes it. I'll tell you that it's a risk prevention for self-preservation. If you came to me and sent something to me to get my opinion on it, and my team looks it up and we research it, and I send you back a response when we get together and meet, and I say, I have a big beef with this, I wouldn't use that word, but I have a point on this, and here are my reasons why. It affects this process over here, it's on the edge of the not legality, but on the reg over here, and it might hurt some people over here. And you don't address me in that sidebar meeting or on the side, and then you don't bring it up in the meeting, I'm more than likely to bring it up in the meeting. Not to embarrass you, but because the company needs that information, because it affects 3 levels in the company. And I don't want the company making that decision without that information. So aside from being professional and to keeping it with ethics and to make sure your company does it, it could save you some embarrassment. Because it's hard to be called out in front of everybody else, especially if they've reached out to you to give you an answer. Let's go up to keeping it kind. We talked about this, the horse again. Just focus on the issue. We are humans. You're not gonna get along with everybody. We're all grown up. We know that. You can still be kind. You can still be professional. You can still look the person in the eye. You can still shake the person's hand. All these things are a sign of kindness, a sign of respect, a sign of our humanity. So keep it kind, and if your company has a value of respect to everybody, it falls in this. Last is going to be set and stick to your allotted time. This is respecting people. If I were to overrun 10 minutes, you should, I'll just get up and walk out at me at the 45th minute because you're going to your next one. But if you stayed back, I'm taking away and disrespecting the next speaker. So always do that. If I'm in a smaller setting meeting, or even in a bigger sometimes, I'm monitoring the clock and I'll say, we're about 10 minutes away from being done. Are you okay extending? Because I've got another 20 minutes of material. If they say no, I'm prepared to wrap it up in about 3 minutes so we can have some discussion at the end. You've always got to have that in your mind to do it. Again, that's a sign of respect for the person, for your own self-preservation. It lets them know that you respect them, and the fact that you can wrap it up in 2 minutes and save 5 minutes for discussion helps your idea move forward. Now, you may find out it's a bad idea, but at least you know that, and you can go reframe it. So again, in line with the respect everyone value. So over here, you've just got the context counts, you've got the topic itself, frame it, keep it kind always, and then lastly, set and stick to the time allotted. President Wilson, communication has not changed in the last century, it's not changed in millennia. I can take you back BC times, we can find these same principles that we just talked about, but we didn't have microphones and all this stuff back then. Some reporters, he's walking out, yells out to him, hey, how long President Wilson just take you to do a 10-minute speech? Or prep, about 2 weeks. Well, wait, how long does it take you to do an hour speech? About a week. What about a 2-hour speech? Well, I'm ready now. Well, why is that? it takes a lot more time to get my ideas down to 10 minutes. If we had 2 hours, I would bring in more illustrations, try to drive the point in deeper to help everybody learn and reinforce it myself. If I only got 10 minutes, I had to be very picky on my illustrations. In fact, in my last dry run on this on Thursday, I cut out a whole slide, the one we skipped, because I was bumping up against time. And I just had to choose, but that's what you do. That's the responsibility to do that, to honor everybody's time. So 10 minutes takes about 2 weeks, an hour about a week, and if you're gonna give me 2 hours, I can just start talking off the cuff. It just may not be worth listening. You didn't say that. So communication steps. This is that Ron Hall book. It's in brackets at the bottom in minutes. The title is just Satan 6. It's a 50-page, easy read. There's a lot of pictures in it. I'm not trying to make fun of that. He goes, look, when I say do this, this is what I mean in a picture. And yes, it's 1996, but communication hasn't changed since 1996 either. And he says, look, there are 5 things you need to do to communicate clearly. Identify your burning issues. Some companies told us the bluff bottom line up front. You know, you start in your intro and the guy, I have executives that interrupt me. I've interrupted my team members or people briefing and said, listen, you've gone 2 minutes, what are you talking about? And I'm gonna be direct because I'm training everybody in the room when I say that statement. I say it kind, but I need to know. On an overview of that burning issue, what are 4 or 5 major points in it, okay? An idea, don't come to me empty-handed, come up with some idea to solve it. Next, what's the payoff? What's your business case? Why are you even taking my time? Why am I taking your time? And then lastly, give me some next steps. That's the time, a lot of times when we say give me next steps, so I typically will end a presentation on, and the next steps are, the goal you're gonna find out in his whole book is in that 6 minutes to engage the audience. If you're on a board of 12 people and they start popping off ideas and everything, you know they bought the idea. They just wanna refine it. That's great. If they say, hey, go think this through before some more, you didn't do so well. But that's okay, you get another shot potentially. But that's really his whole structure of doing this. So, I'm gonna give you one illustration from a personal life that's been pulling a lot of this stuff. Anybody get the idea what the picture is here, something smelling? So this is when I had a 1-year-old. My wife and I are sitting and talking one day, and all of a sudden something reeks. And I go, oh, it's a toddler, he's spoiled his diaper. So that's the burning issue. Something smells. My overview is my kid has had well, not an accident, they just do that. I have an idea. I'm gonna look at my wife and convince her that it's her, but in that quick glance at her, with a non-verbal, I know it's my turn. The payoff is gonna be, we're gonna have to get rid of that stench. So I'm gonna pick my son up and run him over to the nursery and take care of the job. But you see, 6 quick steps, that was very easy. You're all convinced that was the right step of practice, appropriately, I mean, especially for the husband to go do it, right? I get all that. But that's how easy it is to do. So what I want to do is grab your book. This is not in the back of your book, but there's a blank page in the book. And just write your these 5 steps down here, and then write them down. I'll leave this up the whole time, but I'm going to give you 5 minutes, and I'm going to have a timekeeper in the back to give you 5 minutes because I don't have a clock up here. And just write down your burning issue. Write down 3 or 4 points about it. So your overview. Come up with an idea of how, the purest way, and something visual if you can. You're not going to give anything visual, but I did this on purpose so you have a visual that you can do it on a single sheet of paper. And then what's the payoff? And then what do we need to get started? And all those things that we went across, the 4 things, you see the competence, the clarity, the nuance, and the reciprocity. They're all built into the model. So I'm going to give you 5 minutes. So for my clock keeper in the back, give me 5 minutes. Go ahead and start now. And we'll just be quiet. It's very hard. Should be about halfway through. I'll call pencils down at the end. Got about a minute left. We're already close to wrapping it up. All right, why don't we wrap up here? And what I'd like to ask then, is there anybody in a sanitized version willing to share his or her burning issue and walk us through the process in 2 minutes or less? Yeah. Well, right here. Go ahead, right here.
I'm the only one?
Yeah. Your hand went up first. There's another one in the back.
Okay, I will use the book, but it is hard, right? You gave us 5 minutes.
Sure.
5 minutes thing. You said it takes 2 weeks to prepare.
Right.
Okay, yeah, it's hard. It's really hard to boil down what the issue is. But something in me talked about this. Lack of empathy to build universal products. What does that mean? A very long statement. Okay. Going with the overview or nuances of it, this morning we all were standing in the queue. I have a leg injured or I'm in a wheelchair. I don't know how to get down those stairs. I don't know how could I get into that queue. There is a ramp outside, but not into this steps queue. So my idea is, when we are trying to organize this event, we should have thought about accessibility or reasonable accommodations, checking whether the facility has it, or even the stage in the morning didn't have a ramp to get on, possibly. So that's my idea. So we need to shift left that accessible thinking or reasonable accommodations. The payoff is you'll get more audience, or that becomes a luxury. We have an elevator to go down. All of us can get into that one and get down. Or maybe have any other luxury we can think of. And what we need to get going, start thinking about it, start talking about it.
Anybody convinced? Yeah, all right. So that's hard to do in 5 minutes, but it can be done in 5 minutes. So if you have an emergency at the office or something bad that happens, you can, as you're walking in to get to the boss, you can actually frame this stuff up in your mind. It may not be perfect, but it's a lot better than saying we got a major issue and can you solve it for the boss, right? So what we've done today is just gone through a communication model and some steps, the Hoff model. And we have some tools to hone your processes of communication, hopefully make better decisions for yourself, for your family, for your company, and for your clients. I do, if you want to scan this, if we connect on LinkedIn, that'd be great. I'll leave it up there for a second or two because I want to show you one backup slide. I'd shift to the next slide. I'll bring this up and I'll bring that back. But I said I was in the military. If you have any military affiliation or have somebody who works for you or you know somebody, there are free classes offered through Syracuse University. All you have to remember is 020. If you went out to the internet and just typed in 020 opportunity, onward to opportunity, they have donors who give this stuff. You can get certifications in security, you can get your PMP, you can get your PMI, ACP, all these things. Now you get one, so each person gets one, and his, her husband, wife, spouse, etc. can have one as well. So I just want to off that, if you've got military members, I'm always trying to help folks out with that. And then I'm gonna take us back to, just remember 020, and I'm gonna take us back to this in case anybody wants it. But I'll open it up for any questions about communication. We've got about a minute, 2 minutes left. So. Yes,
So you were stressing that wonderful presentation, by the way.
thank you.
And I realized that when we met in the hallway earlier, I could have done better when I communicated with you. So thank you for that. But you had talked
That
about
was informal.
we talked about the different types of communication, and you stressed writing it down, getting it out.
Yes.
How do you feel about talking it out with AI, which is something I do in the car when I'm driving to get my thoughts out, versus writing it out?
There is a, I can't remember the term, but it's the kinetic, it's the physical writing or typing is different than verbalizing.
Okay.
And there is some connection. I'm not I'm not a brain doctor by any means, but I've heard enough people talk about it, that the physical act of writing or typing is different than speaking.
Okay.
And it locks it in better.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes. Others? Well, and with that, we'll get you to your next conference on time, and thank you for your attention.